apologize for the wait. It is Thursday, February 5th at about 6:15 p.m. in the evening, and I call the City of Maple Plain Planning Commission meeting to order. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks, everybody. All right, so first order of business is that I need to either items need to be added to the agenda, or I need to hear a motion to adopt the agenda as is.
We have to make a motion to add the items, or, okay.
To amend the agenda.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to amend the agenda to add the resolution for the TIF financing and the public hearing.
Okay, I got a motion from, forgot your name, Adam.
Second.
Okay, and then second from Nick. Other Nick. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say the same. Hearing none, ayes have it, 4-0. Okay, so then we can proceed with looking at the minutes from September 4th, 2025 and December 4th, 2025. Given David and Nick, you all, I think you were here for December?
Yep.
But you were not here for September, so you can look through them and comment and make suggestions as needed. From my perspective, I thought they were very thorough and detailed, so that's good.
I'll make a motion to accept.
Okay, David makes a motion to accept the meeting minutes. Can I get a second?
I'll second that motion.
Adam seconds the motion. All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed say the same. Ayes have it, 4-0 as well. Okay, so now related to new business, is this the moment where we talk about the resolution? Or Mark will present news business related to North Shore Development and the rezoning, the request for rezoning and approval of the preliminary and final plat.
Yes, thank you, Honorable Chair, Commissioners. Good to see everybody. Happy New Year. So tonight we have a couple things on your agenda relating to a downtown redevelopment project in the city. We've got a request for rezoning, site plan review, plan unit development, and preliminary and final plat to allow the construction of a new multifamily residential building to be located on the properties generally at the intersection of Main Street and Maple Avenue, identified by the PID numbers in the report. We also have a resolution considering Planning Commission approval of the tax increment financing that's being requested as a part of the downtown redevelopment. And I'll note on the tax increment financing piece, we're just making a finding from a planning perspective, not a fiduciary or tax perspectives per se on this, that the proposed plan is in accordance with our adopted comprehensive plan. And so we would need both of those things. It's kind of rare and unique that you're being brought in a resolution. As you know, there's no other areas where you actually consider resolutions as a planning commission. This is one of those areas, and we haven't done, I think the city's actually only done one other tax increment deal in the history of Maple Plain, so not a very common occurrence. With that said, I'll introduce the project, kind of walk through the project, talk about a couple things related to the project, and then we can talk through as much or as little detail. As you noted, this was noticed for both public hearings, the public hearings that we talked about from the planning side and also from the tax increment side. So with that said, Matt Alexander and North Shore Development, who are the applicants, have been working with the city for, I believe, over a year actually now on the potential redevelopment of the 5 properties that the city has ownership of in the downtown area. Those 5 properties have been acquired over time by the city and consolidated to a point where we've packaged some pieces with MnDOT, some pieces the city owned, and we've also, through the use of grants, acquired and done even cleanup on what used to be a filling station or convenience store and filling station located on one of those properties. In total, those properties have an aggregate of about 1.5 acres overall. And you can see that on the proposed preliminary plat. And so this particular development, redevelopment of this property is something that the city's been working on for over 20 years. The city has, through a number of different processes, a number of different grants, been looking actively to redevelop this particular block into a higher and better use for a long time. As some of you know, the city has looked at a wide array of uses on this property that span from retail, retail office, mixed use, retail residential, all residential, residential, mixed use retail, and civic. I'd show you a couple of these examples once Jacob gets me up back online. But with that, the city has spent a lot of time trying to find a developer that would redevelop this property in a way that was consistent with the city's, the majority of the city's priorities, the majority of the city's vision. What we found in that 20 plus years of trying to attract and look at redevelopment is there has never been, and there's unlikely to be, a perfect fit as it relates to the, let's see here, I think it might be on. So as it relates to the redevelopment, thank you, of this property, every development proposal that we've seen over the last 20 years has been a variation of one of those things that we've tried to have done, but never have we been able to realize a full-on proposal where it kind of checked every box. It was always, we could meet some, not all. And so with that, I'll just kind of, just real high level, I'll walk through just so you can see these are not in your packet. These were just part of my presentation. This is 2015. We had a pretty broad marketing piece to try to obtain retail development on this property. We had engaged a team that would look at the redevelopment of this property that we're talking about tonight. In 2016-17, we had a couple of developers come forward looking at possibly doing 3, 4, 5-story. This was a Bavarian-themed potential project where we looked at a mixed-use building with City Hall. We looked at a library, City Hall combination. We looked at kind of a retail mix. You can see a bunch of different themes that we kind of walked through with all of these different proposals that came through, kind of variations of different things. In 2018-19, we then had another developer come forward. They had kind of another plan with City Hall Library combination, retail office, residential, underground parking, some sort of a flex public plaza, closing of Bud Street. 2021, we had another building come through. This one had a mixed-use building with a kind of retail corner, kind of out in this location. that would have been, maybe even drive-through retail. Caribou Cabin was one of the things we talked about. Then we had in 2022, and I think this went into 2023, we had another study come through. It looked at a similar redevelopment plan for this site with a residential building, no retail in this particular proposal, kind of concepts of what that started to look like. Then in 2024 and into 2025, we had another proposal here for another multifamily building that came forward to the city with a couple of ideas, a couple of concepts. And so through all that, I just wanted to kind of show the history. We've looked at this site in multiple ways, many different times throughout its 20-year history. We've looked at anything from just full-on retail to a mixed use. We've looked at buildings that range in size from, I think, 64, 65 units all the way to 145 units on this same site. And so with all of that, the city has had, I think, 6 different purchase agreements on this property during that time period. We had some of those purchase agreements extended during that time period for quite a length of time. And so all of that to say that we've worked for a very long time to try to realize some sort of redevelopment. Now, with that said, I'm going to touch a little bit on kind of the comp plan piece that addresses the redevelopment and the vision, but also talk to what we've talked about as a city over those years, kind of even outside of the comprehensive plan in terms of what we wanted. And then I'll come back to kind of what's being proposed. So with this particular site, it's zoned mixed use downtown, which is our mixed use zoning district, and it's one of our subzones then, the downtown zoning district. And it's guided by our comprehensive plan as mixed use. And so with that, the city has always envisioned this particular part of downtown to be some sort of a mixed use. What that is, I think, has varied and has differed between councils as they've come in and out, and different council members and planning commissioners have been involved in some of the discussions. We've had a difference of what this particular project could or might look like. So you've seen all those kind of variations that I started to show. With that, the city had identified in its comprehensive plan, I'll just highlight our mixed use downtown, land description. It's a land designation established for the entire downtown area. And it talks about a combination of retail service, commercial, public, semi-public uses, office, residential, vertical types of uses, civic type of uses. And it talks about a density range of between 20 and 40 units per developable acre. It also speaks to the height might vary between different zoning designations. And we've had a variation of heights considered and proposed. And it also talks about in our comprehensive plan that the uses can be mixed vertically in a single structure with different types of uses, or they can be single uses within any of those buildings. Within our overall downtown, our density we show at a overall range across the downtown between 20 and 40 units, and we projected that between 2020 and 2040 we'd have a minimum of 167 residential units, a maximum of 334 within that downtown mixed use. And then we talk about percentages saying that approximately 50% of the downtown, 35% of the downtown, 50% of our general would be occupied by residential in its entirety, meaning that you would only see 35%. There goes our link. I don't know how stable. Let me see one more time if I can get back on it really quick. I don't know if it's gonna go. have this up, Kevin? Are you gonna be more stable than me? Can you at least just pull the packet up and we can scroll. So, so as it relates then to the comp plan, I'll note for you, there is, we did get a comment on our comp plan and whether or not this particular project met the guidance by the comprehensive plan, noting that this particular development is currently at about 59 units per acre, which, as you would know, is outside, or it's beyond the 20 to 40 units. We did have somebody had asked the question if that was consistent with the comp plan. We did go back to the city attorneys, and they provided a reassurance that they think that the proposed building does comply with the city's comp plan, in that we had a rational basis for making a determination and interpreting how our comp plan in that density range was clearly stated to be across the entirety of the downtown and not focused on any singular property. And the city attorney also provided the city with a memo related to that also kind of just confirmed our assumption and then kind of reinforced that it using that kind of rational basis, that it would have been impossible for the city's comprehensive plan to realize that in the form of mixed use and other types of uses. So when you get one of the comments tonight, just know that the city attorney's recommendation to us was to continue and proceed with their opinion. So with that said, I'm going to walk through the project, and I will note that kind of all aspects of what's being proposed tonight, and then we can kind of talk through some of the questions. So the proposed development that we see tonight is for a 95-unit multifamily residential apartment building. It's a singular use in that it would be 100% residential. It's intended to be a market rate 95-unit building that would consist of 5 stories. There is a lower level story, which would be parking. There is a first floor story, which would also be parking. And then there are 4 residential floors that go above those units. And so with the proposed development, the city has kind of had a variety of different conversations with this particular development relating to the overall number of floors, the overall number of units. When we originally had looked at this proposal, it was a 71 unit apartment building that had been proposed. And once we got further into some of the design details of that building, looking at soil, looking at some of the remediation that might have to be done to remove some soil on that site, the developer came back and said that they wanted to look at a 95-unit building, but add an additional floor of parking, which was supported by the city. It came back before the EDA and then City Council, and we talked about that a little bit. And there was definitely a high level of support for that additional off-street private parking. And in turn, the building needed to go up 1 additional story in order to make that all go together. So we've worked quite extensively on building architecture, on this site layout and site design, ultimately trying to get to a proposal that made sense for the developer and ultimately we think can make sense for the city in terms of its architecture, its building materials, its site layout, and how it fits into this particular block, as well as how it probably sets the stage for additional development that could occur or will occur, hopefully as additional redevelopment would happen. The building itself, 95 units, is broken down into studios, 1 and 2 bedroom units. That table is shown in the staff report. And the intent of those units is to try to capture that kind of market rate rental market that doesn't currently exist in Maple Plain. We don't have new product. We don't have new product of this type that currently serves the city. So with this proposed development, they're trying to balance those 3 unit types within the building. The primary building entrance is located on the east side of this site. And when we've worked on this site, we've looked at a number of different scenarios where the building entrances would be facing Highway 12. We've looked at scenarios where the building entrances face Main Street. We've looked at where they're on the corner of Main and Maple. But ultimately, with the site layout that we've landed on, it really provides, I think, a strong presence to the front door, both from Main Street and from Highway 12, in that we create that kind of eastward facing entrance to the building. And so with that entrance, you'd be able to visibly see it from both sides of the building, Main Street and the Highway 12 side. With the first floor parking level, we've spent a lot of time talking with the developer and trying to work on how do you make that first floor parking garage feel more like a pedestrian scale first level that can be adjacent to Main Street and still has characteristics that are indicative of a kind of Main Street level, but obviously has parking behind it. And so with that, the developers put together a series of elevations that are in the report that we can take a look at that attempt to try to bring different elements into play. And so, I don't know, Kevin, if it's possible to scroll down without jumping off of this. Yeah. There you go. So that first elevation there, that's the, that elevation is facing, is that east? Yeah, so you can see what we've tried to do at the entranceway is create a high level of openings, windows that would be facing that eastern elevation, and then wrapping those around the corner on both the south and the north sides of that to try to really emphasize that entry point, but also to provide, more of a identifiable streetscape to that corner of the building. And then if you scroll down a little bit further, we get to the Main Street side. The top elevation there on the screen shows what would be our Main Street side. And we've worked with the developer to try to introduce essentially faux windows to that parking garage side that would start to provide some sort of connectivity between the pedestrian walkway on Main Street and just more pedestrian scale architectural features that feel like you have some more of a frontage that relates to the street. The developer has provided, and they're not going to show up because my thing's not connecting, but they have provided, and we can maybe talk through those. Yeah, there's some handouts maybe. They're even looking at trying to integrate some historical imagery into those openings essentially, and then into the glass area on the east side of the building that would, they've worked with the Historical Society here to try to take some kind of historical timelines and some historical facts about the area and integrate those into kind of the backdrop that could be lit or lighted along the Main Street, those faux windows that we're looking at there, and then on the eastern end of the block. As it relates to the rest of the architecture, we've still been working on that architecture, really trying to get this to a different level of kind of connectivity to the downtown with pedestrian, kind of a pedestrian level scale, knowing that this building, as large as it is, to try to accommodate the units to make the math work, really, becomes a bigger mass than anything we've been accustomed to in our downtown. but utilizing color, utilizing materials, and then utilizing openings and some of these other elements, trying to break the building down from a visual perspective so that the massing of that building doesn't kind of take over, but more or less sets a framework for beginning to set the future architectural stage for other redevelopment in the downtown. We also note with the architecture and the size and the scale of this project that the ability for the city to assemble a similar size parcel in our mixed-use downtown area is highly unlikely. This is a very unique piece of property that, because of the city's ownership of the majority of these pieces to start, we were able to assemble a 1.5 acre parcel. But trying to do that or trying to replicate that again in the limited area that we have for downtown is going to be extremely difficult. So when we look at this and we're talking about precedent, or we're talking about what if this started to multiply, it's unlikely that we'd be able to get this much land under assembly in the small area that we have designated for our downtown redevelopment. So I think that's something to at least think about as it relates to this project and then the project architecture. So in order to make this all work, we would need to consider a planned unit development so that we could look at some flexibility in the standards that we have put together. So with our downtown mixed-use development standards, it was anticipated that we would have mixed use, but with that, we've always anticipated that we would need some flexibility one way or another as it relates to some of our design standards and some of our other standards that we have in the downtown to try to make a project go together on this. And so as we've looked at this, the planned unit development seems to be the right tool that we have to try to put together a project that could get to a density that we're talking about on this property, bring that level of new residents into the city, and still stay at a place that is affordable or obtainable in this particular market. And so we look at all of the things that are being proposed. When we reviewed this, we looked at also our downtown design standards, which was a set of standards that we established almost 20 years ago now for the purpose of trying to set the framework for redevelopment in the Gateway, the downtown, and the Bud Avenue districts. What we know of those standards as we've gone to apply those standards, I mean, they were originally adopted with, the perfect intent that we'd be able to achieve everything in those. What we know now is we are trying to take the majority of those standards and apply them to the extent that we can, knowing that things like economics and market also drive development and redevelopment, and we have to be able to respond to those things as well if we're wanting to get some of these projects to actually move forward. And so in looking at the planned unit development and kind of what is being requested of us, I'll just walk through those pieces. And so as it relates to the building height for this particular project, the requested height here is 54.5 feet. Our zoning ordinance has a downtown standard of 40 feet. And so in order to make the parking work on this property, also in order to deal with the soil conditions and then water table levels on this property, a higher height standard is needed in order to make this project work. As it relates to the setbacks, we noted that the building meets all applicable setbacks outside of the 50-foot setback from Highway 12. The Highway 12 setback, thanks Kevin for working through that. The Highway 12 setback is 50 feet for all buildings, but we write into our ordinance that there are times where the 50-foot setback is not going to be applicable because it would render properties not usable, and it notes that the city council has the ability to waive that provision. In this particular case, the 50-foot setback would render the majority of this property not usable and would put a pretty big strain on potential redevelopment of that property. I noted the density overall already is at about 56 units per acre. And I noted how we looked at that in our interpretation of the city's comp plan. The parking then for this project is noted that in mixed use, we require a minimum of one parking stall, garage, or dedicated space for each residential unit. For the residential uses, parking space must be on site and cannot be shared. We also have a provision for multifamily, which is not pertaining to this in our ordinance. So if you looked at that, it would say that multifamily, for all other uses, not directly specified within the mixed use, have a two parking space per unit count. With this particular building, they're proposing 122 indoor parking spaces on 2 floors and then 30 exterior parking spaces. It would equate to a total of 152 parking spaces, or a ratio of 1.6 parking spaces per unit. We find that the 1.6 ratio is a sufficient parking ratio for the proposed development. I noted a couple other sources just for context, not necessarily to be directly the same as, but if you look at ITE recommendations for urban core market, suburban market, or just look at the overall national average as it related to recommended parking space ratios, you can see a 1.46 average. We're suburban, right? So we need to be closer to something between 1.5 and 2.0 is kind of the standard of practice that we're working off of right now. Anybody following parking in the Twin Cities would note that Minneapolis has dropped all parking requirements recently for projects, and there is a trend on reducing and or eliminating parking minimums and parking standards. But with this particular project, the 1.6 is a adequate parking ratio. I think we feel comfortable with what's being proposed. I will note that that does not include the on-street parking spaces that would also be developed as a part of the overall improvements on this project. And so those spaces, while they likely would be utilized by guests or by residents on a temporary basis or, as people visit, they would be public parking spaces that would be open to and remain open to the public. And then I talk about the architecture. We've hit on that already. I noted in our design standards that our design guidelines, which speak to development in the downtown mixed-use area, they show that the city has a requirement for first-floor buildings of 60% fenestration or openings. I would note in looking at and how we've historically looked at and applied those standards were really written for retail commercial buildings, and we have held those standards applicable to retail commercial. We've never tried to apply them to a residential project within our downtown, but they would be difficult to meet. With that said, the first floor window fenestration on this project is approximately 45%. And then on the second and all other upper floors, the city has a design standard of 40%. In this particular case, we found a ratio of 41%, which would be right in line with the recommended fenestration and openings for a building. Again, I think in looking at how our standards were developed and what they really speak to, the idea of a residential multifamily building isn't thought about or addressed. It would be difficult, again, to get to that 60% standard. And then as it relates to building materials, the applicant noted they're using a mix of hardy planks, so cement fiber panels, cement fiber or concrete-based siding in a couple of different forms. And then they're using a variation on colors to try to get to the architecture that's being proposed. Then as it relates to landscape or streetscape in this particular case, we have had a lot of discussion with the applicant on streetscape. The city's downtown streetscape, there is guidelines that talk about different layers of pedestrian spaces, vehicle spaces, and then kind of front of building spaces within the downtown. And really the only thing we have to go back on or really look at is the streetscape that was developed in front of McGarry's, the post office, and the 5910 building on Main Street. The city kind of began a streetscape pattern where we began integrating different pavement as well as tree grates into that streetscape. The city, we spent a lot of time with our engineer and the developer's engineer and the developer to try to identify a streetscape that we think could be carried out in this particular development that would essentially play off of or complement the streetscape that's already been started in front of McGarry's, and be one that we could replicate with additional development as we move forward. And so in this particular kind of Main Street Maple streetscape, we looked at in integrating diagonal parking, one, so we could get additional parking on street, and then utilizing street tree grates and street trees, so adding in that deciduous tree layer, and then utilizing a differentiation in pavement, likely through color, to provide another contextual layer to that streetscape. We were trying to maintain approximately 12.5 to 13 feet of width. One of the things that kind of came out of this, and you can see it on the screen there, this is the Main Street streetscape section that's being proposed by the developer, is they'd like to maintain something up against the building to help with kind of maintenance and wear and tear up against that building front. They noted that in a lot of cases where you've got an urban condition and sidewalk right up to the face of the building, you get a lot of salt related issues. You can get other things like just at that lower level from bumping and kicking and things, hitting into that. And so their proposal would be to maintain about a 4 to 5 foot buffer along the base of the building, and then about an 8 foot sidewalk with street tree grates as shown, kind of strategically placed along that facade. And then when you get to the intersections or the corners, obviously widening out that pedestrian space on those corners. So this is something we've talked about. Obviously, the city, the developers certainly would like, feedback and if there's thoughts from the city throughout this process as it relates to the architecture and the streetscape and kind of how we lay this out. They've really been more of a partner to us. Obviously, we're trying to jointly get this site off the ground and get it going. And so with that, definitely opportunity to talk more about what that looks like. So in all of the various designs that we've gone through with the developer, one of the things that has been consistent is that the city has noted that the city will be redeveloping Main Street and Maple in its entirety. And so we've been talking about the redevelopment of those streets for a long time, and we've been waiting to do those streets until we had a project in front of us that actually can be realized. And so with that, the city this past late fall, after entering into a second phase of the purchase agreement with the developer, kicked off a feasibility study to redevelop the downtown Main Street and Maple, but then determined that it was that the city wanted to extend that redevelopment all the way down Main Street and then include the finger streets of Delano, Pioneer, Marsh, am I missing one? The streets between Main and Highway 12. And so with that, the city has kicked off a feasibility study to redevelop that. That's going to include utilities as well as the full street. And then it will also then include burying the overhead power that is on the Main and Maple block to go underground. And then working with the developer on kind of a start-stop point between the public space or the public improvement and the developer improvements for this particular property. With those improvements, one of the things that the city's determined is necessary to really realize the maximum potential for this redevelopment property is that we are going to be creating essentially a regional stormwater to be able to accommodate stormwater from this site in a essentially what I'll call a plug-and-play fashion. So we will provide a stub to this site that the developer will be able to plug into. And with our redevelopment project, we're going to be looking at taking and accommodating stormwater for treatment and rate control for this particular project, so that we don't have stormwater on this site. And given the limited amount of land that the city really has to redevelop, it's important that we try to maximize to the extent possible that.
Clarification on that? So the city will be paying for a stormwater management system, provide a stub to the developer.
As a part of our redevelopment, that's correct.
Planned separately if we were not to proceed with this project. Stormwater development is just additional cost to the city to support this project. What is the sense of scale of that cost?
That the stormwater sewer, that whole reconstruction will happen regardless.
The,
Whatever do we create?
yeah, so it's a good question. The city has stormwater. The city has stormwater requirements for its project, regardless of this project. We have talked for some time, because it's a city-owned piece of property, that we would consider taking the stormwater, and putting it into an overall system or a broader system that's going to support the redevelopment of the city streets. There is a cost that's being associated with that. I don't know if I have that exact number, but I think it was presented as to what the overall stormwater cost. I want to say it's in the $300,000 to $500,000 range, but that's not exclusive to this site, if that makes sense.
But there's additional cost to support the site because of the type of construction happening, or is it, I mean, it's the same amount of acreage regardless, right? So you're gonna collect so much
Correct.
rain, I understand that. I'm just kind of curious about what that implication is. I mean, because it's the cost of the stormwater system, that'll be borne by all the city residents.
So, yeah, I mean, the city, so yes and no. So, and I can talk about the tax increment financing piece on this. So this site, the developers asked for tax increment financing, which is an economic development tool the city has to try to achieve development where it otherwise couldn't because of the economics. So with this particular project, the city is offering the developer a percentage of the tax increment that's going to be generated because of this development. Mm-hmm. And the city is going to take a percentage for itself and it's probably not going to pay 100% of those costs, but to offset the costs for the city share of the redevelopment. So it's not a straight, it's going to be borne 100% by the taxpayers. There is, that final math is still being worked out as to what the total cost to the city itself will be for all of that redevelopment, including Main Street and all those finger streets going all the way down to the fire station. And so that hasn't been finalized, but this project is going to generate several $1 million that are going to go back into the city's side of the ledger to help offset and pay for those public improvement costs, including stormwater.
Okay, we can review that later when you get to that. I'm
Yeah.
assuming.
Yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure I understand. Okay.
Sure, it's a great question. So stormwater, as it relates to stormwater gradient and drainage, and then as it relates to utility connections, all the parking, sidewalks, a lot of that infrastructure is being developed hand in hand with the developer, but through the city's redevelopment process, we've had a big say in kind of what that streetscape starts to look like, what those parking spaces look like, and then how that kind of integrates into what the developer is proposing as a part of their project. So with that, the kind of last thing on the development side piece that I would note, preliminary and final plat. Normally we, for many developments, we have preliminary and final plat come through as two pieces. This is a fairly simple in that we're really talking about one development piece, one development lot that's going to be coming out of this. And so the combination of 5 lots into one through a plat, we're recommending, and we've done this historically on kind of simple plats or where we're taking and actually combining land rather than subdividing land. We've looked at preliminary and final plat as a singular item through the planning commission process anyway. And so the applicant has provided us with the preliminary plat. The final plat is going to look identical to the preliminary plat. The city did note a couple of drainage and utility easements that would need to be added to the preliminary and final plat, and that would be noted in our review and approval of the preliminary and final plat that would go to the city council. So that's a high-level overview, and we can get into questions on the planning side of the development. I'll speak to the tax increment financing side a little bit also, and then maybe go through that, and then we can open it up for questions. So the city has a tool available to it, tax increment financing. As I noted, I think we've only used this one other time in the city's industrial park in the history of Maple Plain. And so with that, the city would be establishing a development district number 2 and a TIF district number 2-1 for the city of Maple Plain. And so the city has a tax increment consultant who had put together the development program for development district number 2, and then the tax increment financing, in this case redevelopment plan for tax increment financing district number 2-1. And so we would, the Planning Commission is being asked to review these documents for consistency with the city's comprehensive plan and adopted policies. TIF District 2-1 is proposed to support the redevelopment of this particular site, specifically for this 95-unit multifamily housing project. Development District number 2 is a kind of broader district, and we place it across the entire city. And it really just encourages the city in the future being able to redevelop underutilized and blighted properties across the entirety of the city, facilitate private investment, support needed public improvements, and increase tax base and employment opportunities to the extent possible. So the adoption of TIF District number 2 across the entirety of the city just kind of opens that up for us. And then we have this specific TIF district, which is 2-1, which is comprised of the 5 properties that we're talking about for the purpose of this redevelopment. So in order to utilize tax increment financing, and in this particular case, we're utilizing what's called redevelopment tax increment financing. That is a type of tax increment financing that's defined by state statute. And in that, we have to make some findings. The city utilized a third party that does this very often for many municipalities to confirm that the site meets all statutory requirements or criteria for establishing a redevelopment district. And so in this particular case, what we needed to find is that 100% of the buildings located on this property are structurally substandard. And so in this particular case, there was one building that was still remaining on this property. And I will note, over the course of the last 20 years, the city has certified all of the buildings on this property, but the certification windows for those the certification windows for those buildings that were previously certified and now taken down on those properties, those windows only last for 3 years. And so at the end of that, the city can no longer rely on the certification. So in this particular case, we're down to one building, the museum historical building. And it was found to be substandard, which is, I think, not surprising to anybody. And so then on top of that, we have a coverage test or an occupied coverage test. And we have to have 70% of the site has to be covered. In this particular case, we have exceeded that threshold. And then the substandard conditions are reasonably distributed throughout the district. So this 2-1, some of those coverage things and some of those substandard conditions include things on the ground, not just the building. And so that was distributed across the entirety of the site. And those findings were done in a report that you can see. I think it's in the tax increment financing report. So then we have to establish a need for assistance, and so the developer has worked with the city in providing their pro forma and financial analysis for the property, and then the city's financial and TIF consultant has done an analysis of that. And we presented that to the city's EDA on a couple of different occasions, and it will go in front of the city council. Ultimately, the total development cost is approximately $21.7 million in this particular case. And if the developer were to develop this property without TIF, the debt service coverage for the financing would be at a level that would not allow the project to proceed. And so with the tax increment financing that's being offered, it's estimated that the project does meet the financial levels that would allow the project to proceed. And of course, then the developer agrees with that without the use of tax increment financing, the project did not work. With the use of it, it does work. And so in this particular case, the city found that the project is not financially feasible through private investment alone. And so what we have offered to the developer is what's called a pay-as-you-go TIF note that would essentially be issued to the developer. What that means is that the city has identified a maximum reimbursement amount that would be reimbursed to the developer over the 26-year life of the tax increment financing district. That amount is $2,889,000. And the city would give essentially up to that amount, or 70% of the proceeds from the available increment that's generated on as a part of this development. The city would retain the remainder of that for eligible expenses to be reimbursed. So those would be things like utilities, street reconstruction, anything to do with land acquisition. There's a whole list of things that would be eligible, and those have been named in the TIP plan. And then what it means to say pay as you go is that the developer would pay their taxes every year, and then every year the city would send back to the developer or reimburse the developer a certain amount of money that's established in our plan up to that total maximum amount of tax increment financing that has been agreed to then in the TIF note. Just in case anybody doesn't know, on tax increment financing, super high level. So there's an established current estimated market value for that property, and then there's taxes that are determined based on that. So that we essentially would take what's there today and that base value, and then the base amount of taxes paid on that property. We'd freeze it, and then we'd say at the end of construction, it's gonna have a new value, and then taxes based on that new value. And what the city's able to capture is the difference between those two, and so that's the increment that we're essentially capturing. And so anything that was currently paid on those properties, if there were taxes paid, would still be paid, and then we would be capturing for the period or the life of that district, or until we've satisfied the notes that we've issued on that district and satisfied ourselves. We could close that district earlier and take that off the books, and then let the taxes go back onto the tax rolls. The one thing I would note with tax increment financing as a tool, One of the things that it leverages or gives the city the ability to leverage is the city can capture the taxes, not only its city taxes, but it's also allowed to capture the taxes that are generated for schools and for the county. And so as a tool, it's probably one of the more robust economic development tools that the city has available to it because it's able to capture the entirety of the tax, not just the city tax. So with that, the district that we are talking about creating would generate approximately 5.2 million over the life of the district. So if that kind of gives you a sense, then we have a couple of $1 million that the city would capture and the developer would capture that $3 million. Yeah,
Would you just walk us through the table, one example of one of those years?
sure.
Like on page 54 of the whole thing?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I understand.
Sure, yeah.
See, the first year, it's valued at 15 million, but then the second year, it's 21.5. Is that just because it's under construction at that time?
Yeah, that's assuming it doesn't realize its full market value in year one of that, partially because that payable year is based on what was finished in the previous year, so assuming that it's not 100% complete. So then with that, in year 29, it has a taxable market value of 21 million, tax capacity of 269,000. The original base tax capacity, so what's there today, is 13,879. So that captures that incremental difference of 255,000 that would be available in see here. So does it break down?
Maybe we just take year two and just kind of walk across. I want to make sure I understand all the columns.
Sure. I thought there was another table in here. It doesn't look like. Just trying to see estimated. So if you take just table 2, you go across, you'd have the taxable market value, you'd have 21,588,000, tax capacity 269, original base tax capacity 13,879, captured tax capacity for TIF 255,000, and then available TIF from the district at 300,000. And then they give you a present value. And let me look in.
Now, I'm looking at Exhibit A. Is that the same one?
So I have Exhibit 3 and Exhibit 4.
Oh, I'm
Is that, I don't know if that's what you're looking at.
You're looking at section 4, item A.
Pardon?
You're looking at section 4, item A, exhibit 2.
Yeah,
So the
section 4, item A.
original base tax capacity, that stays on the
That's what I was just trying to.
tax roll, correct? And then it's just the captured part that,
I'm trying to make sure, because you got the left side, the first 4 columns, capture tax capacity for TIF. The next one says available TIF from district. So the district, and make sure I understand, the district is justice development.
That's correct.
It's 2-1, which is justice development.
Yeah, it's just these 5 properties, that's correct. And so that's all that's available. Sometimes these districts do extend outside because they would maybe anticipate a future project happening.
Yeah.
That's not the case here.
Okay.
We've limited it to this, partly because we only have the ability to do the redevelopment on a limited area. We couldn't expand this outside of that current area because we're right at or about the threshold to meet all of the requirements for establishment of that TIF district.
Okay, so then if you go back, it said year 2, capture tax is 255,981, available from the district is 300,687. and one's larger than the other, I'm just trying to understand why. The capture tax capacity is 255, but the
Now,
available
Matt, can you speak to that,
is
or do you know
300.
that bump? I'd have to look.
model, I don't know.
Yeah.
Then you have tip to the city is 90, but then it keeps going across. Then you have to the developer.
Well, and so you've got,
Just trying to make sure I understand.
yeah, so the new tax capacity that's being created, 269 base, captured, 255 estimated. I think it's based on an estimated, I think that estimated is an estimated number. You see the city, you're saying city TIF, related share county TIF, and then school diff. That's just a breakdown of the various entities that are contributing to the TIF,
I
but
think we're
that's
on
not.
different tables. I
You're
think,
It's
right?
on page 74 is what, the one that.
Oh.
we're
It's on
look-
74?
No, we're looking at page 74.
Okay, let me keep
I'm
going.
on page 54.
Oh,
54.
54?
Yeah,
Okay, I'm looking at
the
it.
very first exhibit in the TIF district, that's all, yeah. Which was, I thought was the most simplest.
50.
Huh.
Let me go back. I'm not on that one yet. Oh, of that packet particular. Sorry. Partly I can't see. Getting old. 45.
I don't want to,
I
Go on.
keep skipping it, but yeah. I don't, yeah, I'd have to ask, Tammy on that math on the table, of why that goes across. I think if you look at the total real estate taxes paid, there's a different number, and so I think there's an estimated amount. And I don't know the discrepancy between the 255 and the 300 in the table.
yeah, just.
So the available TIF from the district has a higher amount than the captured
Right,
tax increment. Does it says after deduction, available TIF from the district is after deduction of state auditor. It's estimated based on 225 present value, base tax capacity is calculated based on TMV. So I think she's noting this is an estimate based on the payable, taxes payable at a rate of 117.89%. So it's a greater percent estimated based on the taxable market value. So I don't know why the captured TIF number is a different number than that.
right.
Estimated TIF, something we could see. I mean, these tables, like I said, Northland prepares these for the city to calculate that. And I just don't know that one difference in that particular table, what that represents.
Yeah, it kind of,
Table on page 74, or I mean 76 breaks it down a little bit different. It shows the base tax capacity, the captured tax, the estimated total, and then
does
a
it explain it all in there?
breakdown of what goes to the city, the county, the school, and other.
It just gives you numbers, it doesn't
It doesn't-
describe.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense.
Tell you-
Okay,
doesn't tell you what.
thank you.
You know what, it says, she notes this, that the total estimated tax increment is before deducting the state auditor's fee, which is payable. And then that total tax increment collected provides estimated total tax increment after deducting state auditor's fee. So I don't know if that first number is based on that deduction. And then the total number is without it. I don't know if that's the discrepancy, but I didn't do that math backwards, but it might be that.
When do they provide a final set of numbers, I guess?
Well, so this set of numbers is the projected final set of numbers, but I can totally I can get you that answer if you're curious about that answer for sure. Yeah.
One could be more than captured.
Yeah, we can get you that.
We have to understand that.
Yeah, and it would be presented when the council sees it. They're going to be presented with that, that finding
Pretty
from.
major impact to the city and everyone else as to making sure you understand what's coming to the city and, I don't know, just
Yeah, and unfortunately, like on our side, from the planning side, we're not responsible on the financial piece of it. We're finding on the planning piece of it, even though I know it's all part of conversation, it's just not our finding essentially on that, so. So I went through preliminary and final plat also with this particular piece. So with that, on the tax increment financing side of the district, in this particular case, the city does have the city planning commission has a piece of the overall park dedication. I mean the overall tax increment financing for this project, just as a result of the TIF requirements. In this case, making the finding that is presented in the resolution for this project. One other thing I noted that I talked about the streetscape. I didn't just at a high level go over the landscape piece of this project. I just wanted to note that if we could just look at that landscape plan that was provided. It's on 31 of the PDF packet. I just wanted to note that outside of that streetscape, the applicant is proposing some parking lot landscaping, some perimeter landscaping, and some buffering from Highway 12. And so I just wanted to kind of note that we had also worked with the developer on just screening from the parking lot, providing kind of a deciduous or canopy tree cover back to the backside of the parking lot along Highway 12, and then adding in some additional evergreen and coniferous trees that would help to just provide additional layer between the Highway 12 side and that parking lot, noting that at some level that will provide kind of a driver level buffer to that project. And then with that, on the site plan, you can see that the developer is proposing what they're calling an outdoor amenity area right next to right on the inside of that parking ramp. And then on the outside, they're talking about having a dog run or a designated dog area. Other amenities on this site include a sky deck that was noted by the developer on the rooftop on that east side of the building overlooking Main Street. So just to highlight that, in addition to some of the things we talked about with the landscaping and some of the amenities, the developer's trying to create kind of a comprehensive plan that does provide the residents for this particular project with some additional both on grade and above grade amenities through that site. So with all of that, I'd be happy to go into as much detail or answer questions. And then obviously we have a public hearing on a number of items tonight. So with that, I will yield to the Planning Commission.
Okay, so public hearing. I need a motion to open the public hearing.
Motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
I guess let me be more specific. I need a motion to open the public hearing associated to the site plan first.
I think you could take
Or
public
can we do
comment
both?
on the whole thing.
Okay. So then here's the more specific is a public hearing associated to both the site plan review and the resolution review that's presented in front of us today.
I motion for that.
Okay.
Second motion.
Nick, first motions, Adam, second motions. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say the same. Hearing none, the ayes have it 4-0. So the public hearing is open as of 7:25 p.m. Just a quick mention, public comment is a courtesy extending to anyone who wishes to address the council or the planning commission. You will be heard, and we will consider your comments as part of this process. But the other thing I'd like to state is just be courteous. and use your words wisely. So the first person that has written down that they plan to speak here is Raya,
Yes, that's me.
or is it Raya?
No, you got it right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Raya, and we'll love to hear your name and then address.
Sure. This is working, right?
Mhm.
Okay. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Raya Smiley. I'm a land use attorney with Larkin Hoffman, and prior to joining Larkin Hoffman, I actually worked as a land use planner at the Metropolitan Council for over 10 years, working in comprehensive planning. I'm here tonight on behalf of our client, Magnolia 8 Properties LLC, who's the owner of the one parcel that's immediately adjacent to the Maple and Main development at 5210 Main Street. And I just want to mention that our comments really focus on how this project fits within the city's adopted planning framework and how it affects the immediate adjacent property. As it goes to the consistency of the redevelopment or development project with the comprehensive plan, we just want to note that, and this was mentioned during the presentation just a little while ago as well, that the density of the project was mentioned to be about 56 units per acre, which on a 95 units on 1.25 acre property. But that density is actually closer to 76 units per acre. The 2040 comp plan designates this area as downtown mixed use and calls for a density range of 20 to 40 units per acre. The density is evaluated from the comp plan and land use plan perspective at a parcel level and not district-wide. So at 76 units per acre, this project far exceeds the maximum 40 unit per acre allowable. And this isn't something that is averaged across a zoning district, and the right path forward for that would be a comprehensive plan amendment to consider extending or basically increasing the maximum density allowed in the downtown mixed-use land use category. And the PUD ordinance itself also calls for project consistency with the comprehensive plan. So we think this is a point to be considered very closely. If not resolved right now, this inconsistency will resurface again when the time comes for this project to get a sewer extension permit for the review and authorization by the Metropolitan Council. So that will happen at a later time regardless. And going back to the parcel that my client owns, it's the one other parcel on this block that is being proposed for the entirety of it for development. The intensity and scale of the development will directly influence the future potential for marketability of this parcel and general compatibility with the surrounding area. It doesn't mean that we don't like higher density. We actually are very excited about a project that brings this area back to vibrancy from its current state. But basically what we're asking for is that the city should consider this block as a whole and not create an isolated condition for this parcel that can become very difficult to resolve later. And one note about the TIF district that you are considering right now, as mentioned, the public hearing on the TIF district itself is not until Monday, when the city council will actually establish the TIF district. And the TIF district is being established solely for this project. So, and we believe that it is very important to ensure that the comprehensive plan framework and the TIF district are fully aligned and publicly vetted before any entitlements are granted to this development. So to wrap that up, I just want to again mention that we do support a very active downtown. We're not opposing this project, but we just want to make sure that it's the right project for this area and is moving along the correct path as an adjacent property owner. And we are willing to absolutely work with the developer to make sure that that happens. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. That is the only person who signed up, so this I can give back to you. Well, I'll just open it up to any other public comments at all.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it looks like we have the applicant here, right? Sure, certainly come front and introduce yourself, please.
Thank you, commissioners. My name is Matt Alexander with North Shore Development Partners and North Shore Contractors. We're a local apartment company that, this is what we do. We, recent projects in the area was the Stacks of Long Lake on Wayzata Boulevard. Worked with the city there for an acquisition, redevelopment TIF as well. We were very familiar with that, with the process, and it takes a village for these types of projects, as you guys have figured out over the years that this has been attempted and not worked out. So I just want to commend your staff and for working very diligently, and it's a lot of things you have to navigate, especially dealing with MnDOT on Highway 12 and then right-of-ways and public improvement projects and how you're going to fund them, and very thoughtful process they've gone through, and it truly does feel like a partnership. So commend you guys for finding a good team to work with. As Mark had mentioned, we'd started really getting into some fun stuff about how the elevations present themselves around the site, mostly about how it looks towards Main Street and how it looks back towards McGarry's. And I sent these to Mark, and unfortunately they weren't able to. It's overhead. No, it's probably not overhead. So you pass that around. The concept is the lower level window is the one facing directly across the street to the post office. So that would be open windows across the hallway going from the front door back into Main Street. That would be open, lit up at night, and we branded the name of the project Maple and Main. Feeling Maple and Main and Maple Plain just seems to roll off the tongue. And we wanted to honor some history of the neighborhood. And in that, behind that wall would be the large letters Maple and Main with spotlights at night, open to the glass, so you could see that when you walk out of McGarry's or drive down 12. And there's also in there is embedded a historical timeline of the city of Maple Plain and the surrounding areas. And there's a lot of cool stories about James J. Hill, and there's the establishment of the community, the Budd family, and there's some cool pictures. We've been working with Judy at the Historical Society. She's been great. So we've got a number of pictures. And then on the Main Street elevation, a lot of communities have done this in other areas, but we've identified some areas on those that would be panels similar to what's shown over here. This is a project called The Yards in East St. Paul. So they're metal panels that are printed black and white, aluminum, and you can do a historic scene. So we would purchase the rights to use one of the photos from the Historic Society for $1, and then print them and mount them as kind of a walk down history. History is opportunity is how we're seeing it. So yes, we are having parking on the first level. That is just a product of the site and the tight site constraints, and having enough parking for residents to not park on the streets around Main Street, Maple and Main. And so we're very excited about this process and working with the staff. And I think we can, as a true partner, come up with solutions for any problem. But that's all I have. I just wanted to say thank you so much. And, you know, it's been a year of effort, and it's these things do take that long. So this is what I do for a living. It's not a hobby. And so I deal with this process everywhere we go. So, but you guys, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I mean, over 20 years if you're Maple Plain, right?
Yeah.
Talking about the redevelopment of this place.
Yeah, the city, I don't remember the year that the city started assembling properties, but I want to say 2004 maybe, or 2005, the city went after and received a Livable Communities Demonstration Grant for this project, with the idea that that would help kind of provide a catalyst for downtown redevelopment. And so the city obtained that. With that grant, they were able to purchase Olson's Market, which was kind of that other piece, as well as one of the properties to the east, in order to try to get that to go together. And then kind of went through the demolition of that site. So, I mean, this has been an ongoing process for many, many years. And like I said, I mean, we've seen every variation of this. We've seen every level of kind of redevelopment concept. With each one, we were really supportive of trying to get it to work, right? So when it was an all retail concept, when it was a mixed use concept, when it had office, when it became retail and residential, when it became city hall, library, and residential, all of those the city really championed to try to get a project to work, understanding that this particular site, I mean, it really is a catalyst site for the city. I think once you see redevelopment occur, and you realize, significant, tens of millions of dollars of investment, it sets the stage then for other people on a much easier path to come in and say, hey, they've already done it, let's do more. And we see that with small towns. When we're in the western part of Hennepin County, we're at a significant disadvantage because we don't have available to us many of the outstate resources that communities literally 5 minutes from here in Wright County have available, or McLeod County, or some of those counties, and we don't compete for Hennepin County funding or for Met Council funding because of our location. And so it makes it difficult. It also makes it difficult for a developer like Matt's group to be able to get the math to work in Maple Plain when they could charge higher rents 5 miles east of here in another community, right? So a lot of these outlying communities, it's very difficult to realize projects. And so, it's been 20 years. We've got, this is the furthest we've come with a project at this level to get it all the way to Planning Commission. As you know, we've talked about a lot of projects, but they never have gotten to you. And so we're super excited to try to get this across the finish line to the extent that we and the city support, this particular redevelopment. So.
Got another
Do you have?
person that would like to speak?
Yeah. Hello.
Hi, I'm Katie Vassar. I live at 5161 Independence Street. I just have a few questions. I don't have prepared remarks. With respect to walkability, if that's going to be the intent of this downtown space, is there discussion of additional safety features on Highway 12, maybe putting in a stoplight at that Bud and 12 intersection with visibility turning west on Bud, or even turning east? Right now, you can barely see around like the bush. So if there's additional trees and everything, that's gonna really block turning onto 12, coming north on Bud. And then just, excuse me, thinking of connecting like the park, the baseball fields on north side, to make Maple Plain fully walkable, that would just be a safer, keep the traffic lower, especially with additional residents, more cars, everything, kind of incorporate our spaces a little better.
Just, sorry, just to address one item, so Bud Avenue be on the right-hand side there. As part of our downtown street project, will be closed
Permanently?
permanently.
Oh, okay.
So you would not be able to access Highway 12 from that anymore.
So not just during construction, but in
Correct.
general.
Permanently, yep.
Okay. Interesting.
But I do agree there is some level of need for residents on the south side of Highway 12 to get across more than a stoplight by the library. So
Yes, that is out half the year.
I can, so with that, so Bud is one of the safety things that we've been talking about, and the city council supported closing Bud, not vacating Bud, but closing Bud for the time being, so that that particular intersection is eliminated as a full through, which really is going to help traffic at other intersections. The city's long-term plan, and obviously we need MnDOT to help fund, is a full intersection, signalized intersection at County Road 19 and Main Street and Highway 12. In order to make that all work really well, one of the things that was identified was the library is in a really poor location for visibility. And so the city has had, for about 10 years now, conversations with the library, and as recent as yesterday, conversations with Hennepin County Library about partnering with the city to build a library/city hall, and then take down that library so that it could open up sightlines for a much better signalized intersection at that location. So that is part of our walkability. Yeah, I mean, that's part of a broader plan, but this particular project is really kind of spurring then the city to do some of these other improvements in the downtown. So.
Wonderful. And then just two project questions. And I know we're not talking like the financing of the project right now, but will there be assurances to the city, like for landscape, hardscape, performance, letters of credit or some other way
Yes.
for the city to?
Yes, so anything that's approved on the approved plan, including the landscape plan, and then any of the hardscape, would have to be secured by the developer, and then we would not release that until it's completed. Now, on the public improvement side and the sidewalks and some of the street facing landscaping, we're not sure yet who, it might be the city building that up to a certain point, and then it would hand off to the developer. We're still working on coordination of some of that.
Okay. And then final question / comment, just for lighting, I'd like to understand what the lighting on the sidewalks looks like for the pedestrian, if it's like similar street lamps to what we have now, or if it will be, I know you mentioned shooting up at the building, it sounds like spotlights on the building?
The lights I was talking about were actually inside the
Inside,
building.
okay.
Shooting at the wall behind the
Got it.
glass. So
Okay.
the hallway wall would be the mural.
Okay.
That you'd see Maple Lane and, yeah, more of a cool history.
Pedestrian lighting would be done by the city. So we're still working on our lighting plan, because we would install, or design, install, and then own our street lights. They would be consistent with the ones in front of the post office, McGarry's. That's our intent, is to continue that pattern, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Final call, anyone else?
Well, I do want to ask, Mark, related to the, oh wait,
I was just gonna say,
You can close it.
yeah, I need a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
A second.
Adam first the motion, David seconds the motion. All in favor say aye.
aye.
Aye. All opposed say the same. Ayes have it 4-0. As of 7:45 PM, the public hearing is closed. Okay. Yes, Nick, please.
Yes. Mark, I did want to hear your thoughts on I know we have a PUD kind of in place for this to get around the density that was talked about. This is in relation to what the first speaker was bringing up. Has there been conversation of a comp plan amendment, or is this a unique scenario and that's why the PUD is being used? I guess just any comments in response to the first speaker.
Yeah, so we had looked at the density, and the PD is not the vehicle it's not trying to change or get around the comp plan. The comp plan is a comp plan. The city has a rational basis for its interpretation of the comp plan, which is what we need to have. If you were to take the literal interpretation of the comp plan on a parcel by parcel basis in a mixed use district, it does not work. So it could never have been the city's intent to establish a range of density specifically that was contained within each parcel. For example, you had a retail building with a mixed use. We encourage in all of our language, in all of our density, multiple story mixed use buildings, retail on the first floor, maybe a couple apartments on the second floor. Those types of uses are encouraged. They're discussed, but they would not be possible if you were to take a parcel by parcel basis of that range. So the rational basis we established with the interpretation of the comp plan is that we have a kind of minimum density that we projected, and we have a maximum density that we projected across that district, and that relates to people, that relates to a certain number of units, and so we are going to be right within the number of units on the overall acreage of that downtown development district, noting that we have percentages of that are going to be mixed with different types of land uses. With our finding of that we've established a reasonable basis for how we've interpreted that's what we need to do. In this particular case, the PUD is really, we're taking the mixed-use development, downtown development district, and we're saying that if we were to try to stick within the rules that were created specifically for that, we would be limited and not be able to realize certain types of redevelopment. So we utilize planned unit developments in cases where we think that the outcome meets all of the criteria and the requirements that the city, that the district was intending, but needs some flexibility. So that height has always been a topic of discussion for the city. Where do we cap a height? Ideally, everybody wants a 2.5-story kind of quaint mixed-use downtown that has individual 2,500 square foot buildings on it. The reality is those don't happen very easily, and it's difficult to realize that. And so we've talked about this height issue quite a bit. We've also noted quite a bit that high groundwater, it's got bad soils. And so we want parking to work. And so with that, things like that height limitation, that 50-foot setback, are just things that make sense to provide flexibility on. And so if we make that finding that we want to provide some flexibility, then that planned unit development becomes our best tool. In order to do that, in our case, we're proposing that we rezone this property from mixed-use downtown to mixed-use downtown PUD, so that we have a new zoning district, and then this building becomes wholly compliant with that new zoning district.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Any other thoughts or comments or?
Did Stefan provide any feedback? I know he would probably have a lot of comments on landscaping, but
Well, and if he does, I would encourage him. I thought we were gonna maybe see comments from him. He had noted that he wasn't gonna be here.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe we'd see comments. I'm right, you didn't see any, right, from Stefan? Just look one more time. I don't think I did, but he and I had talked about the landscaping, and the streetscape of the
Yeah.
project previously, and he had commented on that. And obviously, if he has other comments, we'd be happy to consider those.
I guess personally, I think from seeing some earlier design concepts, I like where it's going, like to try to break down the facade because it is a large building and scale, much larger scale than what's existing today. So I'm encouraged to see that, and yeah, I think for what it is, the design's going in the right direction. See, my computer died to see my packet. I was just wondering, like along Highway 12, what, kind of seeing what screenings there or what, there's quite a few trees there, okay?
Yep, Black Hill spruce.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure Stefan would have a comment about adding any trees because there's not much you can add. They've
I know he
done.
was questioning on angled parking versus parallel parking spots. Being that we are on the western edge of the metro, we are largely a car-based community. I think it's important that we maintain the street parking for the current businesses and patrons that come to McGarry's, the post office, the library, the little building across the street that hopefully we'll see some more business opportunity with more residents that likely the patrons are going to be driving as a destination to come here. So I think it's important that we try to maximize the street parking as much as possible.
Well, I guess to that, then, I didn't think about this, are the diagonal spaces being developed for public use or for, okay, it is for public use.
Yeah, originally with the 71 unit building and only one floor of parking, we were struggling to get to parking counts without utilizing the on-street parking, which is not, it's something we specifically don't want to do in our ordinance. But one of the things we want to see in downtown is an expansion of public parking spaces, right? We know that we need that. So trying to maximize that with the diagonal parking, I think it's, starts to speak to that. In this particular case, you're adding over 20 on-street spaces with that diagonal, noting that we are taking, some on-street spaces off, so that net is still going to be a positive, though, in the teens for the overall net parking. But I just think trying to concentrate wherever we can, additional parking is important. Yes, Stefan had questioned the diagonal parking, really more from the aspect of trying to provide more space for planting, not surprisingly. But so we've always looked at, and the city has been driving the angled parking, just with the idea that we got to maximize to the extent possible parking on street, so that net increases more. But those are public parking spaces. So,
I guess a question to the street trees, like in the grates, like, is that the city's responsibility to maintain those, or?
it is.
Because I know there's, in front of McGarry's, the one tree that's been missing for a couple of years now, and it's just,
So we've replaced those trees once, I think, in their life. But yeah, I mean, our intent is to try to create a streetscape that has the trees, and I think that was the design guidelines when we looked at those. That also speaks to that. I mean, there's definitely a school of thought between street trees in an urban area and not street trees. I would argue, and of course I'm a landscape architect, so that that's what I do. That if they're planted right, you're gonna get maybe 20, 25 years out of a street tree, but they're not forever. But I would argue any of the downtowns that I think people relate to in our area or anywhere else for that matter, they have street trees. The ones that people say are the best, right, are the ones that people use as examples for, boy, I'd really like to have that downtown.
yeah, I would like to see them. I'd like to see the one get replaced that's gone.
Is there still one gone?
Yeah,
I thought we
there's just
had.
an open hole there that
Yeah.
kind of dangerous, yeah.
Is that noted, Jacob?
Noted.
Let's get a tree back.
Yeah. I think
But they are city responsibility.
yeah. I think it was brought, like a resident, or a city person, or someone commented in a previous meeting about the tree being gone, would like to see it replaced.
I guess I'll just echo, I appreciate the sort of chicken and the egg situation that the city is dealing with here and how this presents a solution to that problem from a development perspective. And I do think it is within the spirit of the comprehensive plan. So your point is taken, Mark.
And just another question that I have is, we've certainly seen a lot of projects related to this area over the years. And so from what I'm hearing, the city has found that this is the best compromise out of all of the projects we reviewed, or is there potential for that there's something better out there that we need to think about, or?
Yeah, here's what I tell you. I mean, and this is coming from me, just my own opinion on this, but I've been doing this same job for 29 years, so that's my perspective, and I work for a variety of clients that are very similar to Maple Plain in this western area. With that said, these projects are extraordinarily difficult to get off the ground. It takes a huge effort and it takes a high level of risk by the city and the developer to make them work, so they don't come easy. And so what I would say is this the best project? And I'm not saying anything about the project. I don't know that it's the best project. I don't know that there isn't a better project that is out there that we could still, realize or obtain. But what I would say is this is a real project, and this is a project that now has gotten to a level where all the pieces seem to fit together, and we think we can make it work. And so what I would say to you is the best project is one that checks the majority of your boxes, but that is also in the ground, right? And so, because you can do as much as, we can do as much as we want, and we can try to keep finding the perfect project. And I say that we don't think this project's a bad project. We think this project checks a lot of our boxes. Would we like first floor retail? 100%. Everybody wants it. But when you do the math on first floor retail in our town, Matt's Group's got to charge $40 to $50 a square foot, or $35 to $50 a square foot. The vacant space right across the street, in the blue building, I'll call it, right, is $6 to $8 a foot. So
Okay.
who's going to be able to come in and realize that price point? We keep hearing that, right? So then who's going to take the risk of vacant space? We went out on a national and a kind of regional hunt for retail with kind of some of our local experts, right? That 2016, 15, 16 push. We used some local guys who are nationally connected, meaning they had ties to, like, they were the developer for Hy-Vee, for Culver's, for Starbucks, they developed all their stores, and they try to get their own clients to build here, and we don't meet the criteria. We don't have the rooftops. So at the end of that, I think we spent 2.5 years, and we had some of the best real estate, commercial level real estate people working on our behalf, because they lived here and they were like, well, selfishly, I just want to have this work. At the end of that 2.5 year blitz that we put on, where we were offering every financial incentive possible, we had I think it was a Planet Fitness signed on for our entire redevelopment area. That was it. That was the only one that could say, I'm coming. So over the years, Dollar General 25 times has reached out to the city saying, we want to build on that spot. Will you give us that spot for a Dollar General? And we've said, no, that's not the right fit. That's not the right development. We've had a Casey's probably 3 or 4 times, Quick Trip, before we got them to there. So are you sure you don't want to give us that primo spot? And we said, no, that's just not the right spot. We need houses here. We need rooftops. We don't have a product at all like this, right? We have no market rate housing in our city right now that's been built in the last 50 years. So, you factor in all that and you say, well, we've got a developer who's ready to go. We got a project that we think makes sense, and we have to grant some funding and a little bit of flexibility. That's how we're getting it off the ground. Well, that's why those tools are available. So back to your question, is it the best? I don't know that it's the best, but I would say the best is closest to what we want and is in the ground, right? Mm-hmm. And so the other thing that I think we do know, and I've seen this over and over again, is if we can get one project to go, then we're going to see other projects go. And we haven't gotten one project to go. We're waiting. We've been trying to put together projects, but more times than not, you get one, you'll see momentum then on that, and I think that's gonna, then that starts to spiral a little bit. And obviously we all know we're in a great geographic location. Mm-hmm. Density wise, we're not where we should be to be able to attract other things like retail. And so, from a city standpoint, one of our goals is to try to generate rooftops, and we want to generate them at a price point that makes sense for the area. This isn't affordable per se, but by all metrics, it's going to probably hit most affordability levels in that probably like 60% AMI range, right? I mean, but we're not putting that on there. But if you look at what that is for Hennepin County, this could be a really good project. So.
Any other comments from the commissioners? No. Any changes to the recommendation? So right now, here's how it reads. Planning Commission, staff is seeking direction from the Planning Commission related to the requested preliminary and final plat, site plan review, planned unit development, and TIF program finding. Should Planning Commission recommend approval of the requested actions to the City Council, the following findings and conditions should be included. And then it lists A, B. A is the proposed site plan, planned unit development, and preliminary and final plat meets all applicable conditions, criteria, and restrictions slated in the City of Maple Plains zoning and subdivision ordinance. Prior to City Council consideration of application, the following items shall be completed by the applicant, and then it lists a couple of requirements there. And then it looks like we would, and in a way, be recommending approval for the development or the creation of Development District Number 2 for TIF, and then specifically the TIF District 2-1. Based on several factors. And then any sign plan will have to be done in accordance with the approved plans. It looks like maybe signage is a part of the process, but was not included in our review in particular.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be unless they had proposed a
Different patch, yep.
Meeting our standards, so otherwise, as long as they meet the standards, that would be done just through our
Any adds or amendments, or otherwise I'll take a motion to either approve or deny the recommendations as listed in the proposal. What do we do first, I guess?
So I would do, if it was me, I think you could make one motion, because again, you're recommending approval of. There you go. Make one motion recommending approval for the planning-related items, and then I would make a separate motion relating to the resolution for the tax increment financing finding. So if you do those in those two steps, I think that's fine.
Okay, so first step is a recommendation of approval or denial for the site plan review. And then another,
Well, site plan review, rezoning, PUD, and preliminary and final plat.
yep, okay, site plan, let's see. Preliminary and final plat, site plan review, planned unit development. That's one part. And then the other part is, and this can be done in the same motion, right? We can do, or do we need
No,
to do separate?
Do them separate. Do that one first, and then do
So
that.
the first motion is recommending approval or denial of the requested preliminary and final plat, site plan review, and planned unit development.
Okay, I will motion to approve the preliminary and final plat and the, what was it, site plan?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Nick motions to approve the preliminary, final plat, site plan review, and planned unit development. Can I get a second?
I'll second the motion.
Adam seconds the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say the same. Ayes have it 4-0. Then we need to recommend approval or denial of the TIF program finding. So I need a motion to approve or deny the TIF program finding.
I'll make a motion to recommend approval of
Is that for the resolution?
Yes, for the resolution, yes.
for the
Yep.
resolution of the,
Is that kind of, that's the second part of this whole thing, right?
If I could, I would like to recommend adding one clause or one phrase at the very, very end of the last paragraph of Resolution 2026-0205-01, where the last paragraph will read as follows. Now therefore be it resolved by the Maple Plain Planning Commission that the development program and the TIF plan are consistent with Maple Plain's comprehensive plan and the general plans for development and redevelopment of the community, and this is the addition, and are hereby recommended to the Maple Plain City Council. And that's it.
Okay, so I need a motion to approve resolution 2026-020501 with the addition of the last sentence of paragraph 6, which says, and hereby recommend to Maple Plain City Council.
I'll make the motion.
David makes the motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
Nick seconds the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed say the same. Ayes have it, 4-0.
Great. It's anticipated this goes to the next city council meeting, which would be the February 23rd, barring that we have all the conditions met and satisfied and ready to go. So
Okay.
Okay. Scroll back up to the top. Okay, then, is there any other business that commissioners want to discuss or bring up, or? Otherwise, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
We have to close the meeting first, right?
Public hearing, we already,
Okay.
yeah, we already closed the public hearing, yeah.
We move a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Second.
Adam makes a motion to adjourn the meeting. Nick seconds the meeting. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it, 4-0. Meeting adjourned. It is 8:05 PM. Thanks, everyone.